Welcome to Happy Money. Let me ask you something. Have you ever gotten a message online that felt just a little too good to be true? Someone charming, attentive, maybe saying all the right things? Romance scams are one of the fastest growing and most emotionally devastating forms of fraud. And the statistics are alarming. About 1 in 10 adults admit they've had an online romantic relationship that led to the person asking for money or cryptocurrency. Americans lose more than $1 billion every year to cons playing Cupid. No one expects to fall for a romance scam, but they don't look like scams at first. They look like relationships. Today on Happy Money, we're talking about love, lies, and lost money. We're revealing the red flags of romance fraud. To help us understand how scammers work and arm us with the tools to protect ourselves and the people we care about is the Senior Director of Victim Support at the AARP Fraud Watch Network, Amy Nofziger. Thank you for joining us, Amy. We are so glad to have you. I'm so excited to dig into romance scams. Let's start by defining a romance scam, because you might think you know what a romance scam is, but they're a little bit more complicated than they may seem.
Yes, they are. Romance scams take months of trust building, right? So what it looks like is you just have a new friend. Maybe you're looking for love online. So maybe you're on a dating app and you're actually looking for love and you've made a connection with somebody. Or one of the trends that we're seeing right now is people are just on social networking sites, maybe on like a fan club page for their favorite celebrity, and they just strike up a friendly conversation with somebody. How it turns to kind of a romance scam per se is that the individual that you are in a relationship with starts asking you for money. And so you're in this relationship with them. You think you have this, trusted connection with them. And then an emergency happens. And they say, oh, baby, I need this money. You again think that this is your person. So a lot of people don't understand, why would you give money to someone you've never met? Well, that happens a lot. But these romance scammers come into this relationship with nothing but nefarious reasons to fall in love with you and to steal from you.
That is so heartbreaking, because it's really just like taking advantage of that empathetic, that desire. There's a loneliness epidemic. People are looking for those connections, for finding that community. And so it's really just taking advantage of that. And the research found that those who are ages 50 to 64 are most at risk for fake solicitations. Why do you think that age group?
Well, certainly they're online and they are looking to connect. Maybe they're not finding the friendships at work or in their community like they used to, right? So they're looking for someone to have a connection with. That age group might be recently divorced, might be looking to get back into the dating world, right? But we need to understand that not every person who is a victim of the scam starts on a dating app, right? Or on a dating site. That's something that has kind of shifted in the last couple of years. And as I said, they're starting as just friendships. So perhaps you're on a Facebook page and you like classic cars. And all of a sudden you just strike up a conversation with someone talking about your favorite car from the 70s. I'm not a car person, so I don't know. Then all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, I really love this car, but I don't have enough money for it. Hey, can I borrow that money from you? Mm-hmm. And then, you think, okay, it's $200. You give them the money. The next thing you know, maybe a little flirting happens. And oftentimes these people are actually in committed relationships.
The people who are falling victim to it are in committed relationships.
In committed relationships.
Interesting.
We've spoken to a lot of people on the Fraud Watch Network helpline that have been married and are victims of romance scams because for whatever reason, there's something that criminal is giving them. So you said the epidemic of isolation and loneliness. There's always something in each of us that we're missing. There's something that we're not being seen, but I'll tell you who will see it, and that's the criminals. The scammers will find out what you need. Married, single, divorced, widowed. They'll find out and they'll give it to you. And that's how they emotionally manipulate you.
And is it always romance? It sounds like there's some friendship that happens here too. Is it usually, walk us through a little bit how these unfold? Because I know that these scammers are really sophisticated in terms of using the right language. They listen, they remember details. They probably are listening to you better than your spouses listen to you or like your friends listen to you. Yeah. They are hanging on your every word because that is what they're good at. So walk us through a little bit exactly how these unfold.
How these unfold is different every day, right? But it's essentially meeting someone online and just starting a conversation. So you might meet them on a dating app. You might meet them on social media. We're also seeing a new increase in people meeting on professional networking sites.
Oh, like LinkedIn.
Like LinkedIn. And how that happens is you get, a message on LinkedIn and it says, hey, Amy, I've followed your career, have a lot of admiration for what you do. I'm a young student. Would you mind mentoring me? And again, so they might hit at someone's ego on that.
Right.
And you think, oh, I would love to do some mentoring. And it just starts as a conversation. And then the criminal kind of finds out, again, what you need. What are you missing, right? Are you missing the attention? Are you missing the admiration? Are you not getting what you need from your friends and family? And we're all busy in life. Tell you, the criminals, they have the time to invest in you. So they will find out what you're missing so they can give it to you. And when they feel like that moment is right, when that emotional vulnerability is right, that's when they'll have their crisis. That's when they'll encourage you to invest in cryptocurrency, but they will find the right time.
Wow. And we are a women's world here. So we're thinking about women. Are women disproportionately affected by these romance scams, would you say? And why do you think that is, if so?
We hear from every single person on the Fraud Watch Network helpline that have been a victim of a romance scam. So it's not just women and it's not just men, but women do report more often. So women are communicators.
Emphasis on the report more often.
Report. But we know that there are many, many thousands of men, because I've talked to them, that have been victims of these scams as well. But I will say this, the criminals will target anyone. They don't care who you are, how old you are, but what they really want is the person with money. So older adults do hold the majority of wealth in the United States. So of course the criminal will target them.
And so you talked about some of the platforms. So dating apps, social media platforms, job sites like LinkedIn. What are the platforms that you're most susceptible? Is it still the dating apps or it happens the most often?
In our research that we did recently, we found out that the majority of people who were victims of these scams met their criminal on a dating app or on social media. And what I like to say is, anytime you enter one of these spaces, really anywhere online, assume the criminal is already in the room waiting for you. The criminal is there online waiting for you. So that's not to really scare people. That's more to empower people to understand if you're having a conversation with a stranger online that you have never given a hug to, never shaken their hand, right? I think that would be a stranger. Just know that they might not be who they are. So we want your defenses up. So we want you to be empowered to spot kind of the tactics that these criminals are using. But we see them everywhere. They're even coming in on text message now. A lot of us have received that text message that says hey, what time's our golf game tomorrow? I totally forgot what time it was. And you think, I don't have a golf game scheduled for tomorrow.
Right.
That is nothing but the start of a kind of a romantic cryptocurrency scam.
Fascinating.
And we've all gotten those texts.
Right. So for anyone who's thinking, well, I'm not on the dating apps, it is on all the platforms we all use every day. And we could, all potentially fall victim at any moment, or at least meet a scammer at any moment on any of the platforms.
Yes.
Okay, with that in mind, let's talk about some of the red flags to look out for. What are the red flags when it comes to identifying some of these romance scam patterns when you're on these platforms?
So some of the red flags, and I actually like to call this one in particular a flashing neon sign, and that is if anybody that you have met online ask you for money, personal information like social security number, credit card number, or encourages you to invest in cryptocurrency. Right there, stop. 100% it is a scam. And they might not start that way, right? They might not come out and ask for money right away. So other red flags are what we call love bombing. Say, oh my gosh, honey, how are you doing today? And it's been 2 days, right? Constantly texting you, constantly checking in on you. Some of the things, have you eaten today? Are you taking care of yourself today? right? But that just feeds into what we're looking for, is to someone to kind of take care of us and pay attention to us. Also, the criminals will quickly want you to get off of the platform that you're on. So if you're on a dating app, they'll say, sweetie, it's time for us to move over to one of these texting apps. So they'll take you to an encrypted app. Also, they'll ask you to lie or keep your relationship a secret. So what I like to say is, if anybody right now is listening or watching this program and you're in a relationship with someone that you have met online and they've asked you for money, they've asked you to keep it a secret, they've asked you to lie to friends and family, you're 100% in a scam. No question.
Wow. Okay, so if you notice the red flags and you do suspect that you're in a romance scam, what should you do next?
If your gut is telling you, like, if you're in a romance scam, listen to it, first of all, right? That's one of the things our victims have told us a lot, is that, like, something didn't feel right, but I just didn't listen to it because, you know, he kept sending me these nice messages and it felt good, right? So listen to your gut and stop talking to them. Now, some people say slow down. I say just stop. Right? And then talk to a friend, a family member. You can call us on the Fraud Watch Network helpline, because you need a second opinion to this. You need to bring someone into this conversation, because, again, scammers thrive in silence, and you don't want to be silent about this. Plus, it's a new relationship, right? You want to share it with your friends and family because you're excited about it. If you have lost money or personal information, if someone has stolen from you, you need to report it immediately. And I always recommend people to start with local law enforcement. You can certainly report it to ic3.gov, which is the Internet Crime Complaint Center. And if you don't know where to go and you're overwhelmed by all of this, you can call us on the Fraud Watch Network helpline, and we will guide you to the next steps.
That's excellent. And, you know, I feel like a lot of people are probably embarrassed, right? Because, you know, they've lost money, or even if they lost what they hoped was a relationship. Like, there's a lot of emotions there around embarrassment, but it's clearly something that happens to a lot of people. We saw that statistic at the top, 1 in 10, like, you're very much not alone. So, you know, don't be afraid to kind of speak up. And if you talk to your friends, guaranteed someone knows somebody who's probably had the same thing happen to them.
You're absolutely right. Speak up, share your story. For some reason in our society, we blame victims of financial crimes. Why is that? They had money stolen from them by a criminal, and they need to report it.
Right. And it's so interesting about the cryptocurrency. Why is it always cryptocurrency?
So the criminals now, it's not always cryptocurrency,
okay,
but the criminals are asking for money to be put into a cryptocurrency exchange. So how they're doing that is they're saying, I was able to retire early because I got into this cryptocurrency investment quick, early on, and I was able to make my money. Or they'll say, oh, my cousin, he's an expert at crypto investing. What, baby, why don't you go invest with him? Then, we can take this money and buy our first house together. Right? So what they're doing is they're essentially getting you excited about this potential investment, but they're also not having it be with them. It's with their friend, their cousin. So it seems like there's a little bit of a barrier. So you think, well, he's not taking the money from me. It's this place over here. But with this scam, and law enforcement calls it pig butchering. People might have heard about that.
We've covered that at womensworld.com.
Yes. It's devastating. People are not only losing their life savings in the scam, they're losing their homes, their retirements, their families. And unfortunately, we are losing lives with the scams because people feel like there's no other way out and they're dying by suicide.
That is just so devastating to hear, that people are taking their own lives from this. This is a crisis of tragic proportions. What can we say to people who are in the position of being a victim to give them hope and to make them realize that they are not alone and there are options?
I think one of the best things to say is, I'm so sorry that this happened to you. Right? Give them the empathy and the kindness and the compassion that they need. I'm so sorry this happened to you. I'm not sure what we need to do today, but together we're going to figure it out. Thank you for telling me. Thank you for trusting me with this information. And then be there for them. Be there for them. It's a very hard thing to receive that information, but also think about how challenging and brave it was for that person to give you that information. So if you have to write it down, if you have to remember it, I'm so sorry this happened to you. We'll figure out a path forward.
And sometimes that's all it takes, is someone to remind you that there is a way forward and that you are in it with them.
Absolutely.
All right, let's talk about the psychology of what goes into your brain and your body when you're going through something like this, like a romance scam. What are you thinking? What are you feeling? What are the kind of like thoughts going through your head? Why is it that we as humans are so drawn to these scammers who seem so enticing?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would almost ask the question, what drew me into my husband when I first met him? The same emotions that I have when I fell in love, right? The only difference is he was standing in front of me and not asking me for money. Well, just yet. But what happens is these scammers will play on your emotions and they'll get you so emotionally hijacked that you're not really thinking cognitively anymore. Mm-hmm. You're not thinking, this doesn't make sense. This person that doesn't even live near me, that I've never physically touched, is falling in love with me, and I am falling in love with him, and now I am investing my $250,000 401k in his cousin's cryptocurrency venture. That doesn't make sense. Because when you're so emotionally invested with this person, it all makes complete sense. And that's why it's really important from the start of any of these relationships to kind of see the tactics and see the red flags right away. So you're not so far down in the journey where you're so emotionally attached to this person. People have said to me sometimes, what are some physical red flags of someone who might be going through a romance scam? And I'll say, are you noticing this loved one be giddy? And usually they're a grump. Right. So there are signs, like they're just like so excited. But again, that's how any of us are when we first fall in love. Right. We're giddy and we're excited and our palms are sweating and our heart is racing. So it's very similar to falling in real love, right? Because these people essentially are falling in real love.
But it happens quickly. And it reminds me a little bit of, like the psychology of dating a narcissist, for example, who throws all the red flags at you and like everything that you want out of a relationship, they give to you. And they often say like, and this is where I don't want to talk about victim blaming at all, but is there anything you can do in your own sort of like therapy or, on your own to kind of help protect yourself psychologically so that you don't feel like you're trying to fill those gaps in your life with somebody who's ready to fill it and take advantage of you?
I mean, I think that's a whole separate podcast that we could get into. But I think we all know little pieces of our personality that are missing. And that, if someone like smiles at you on the street, you're like, oh my God, someone thought I was, pretty today or something like that. So the scammers will find out what is missing and they will be sure to give it to you. That's why I do think it's really critical to share any of these new relationships with your friends and family, because having that third party, that second opinion come in and say, that doesn't seem right to me. Let's go through this together, because they're not in that emotional frenzy like you are.
So in 2022, the Federal Trade Commission reviewed millions of reports on romance fraud, and they found certain patterns when it came to the scammers' favorite lines. And I think these are really interesting. So it's often, I'm sick, hurt, or in jail. Nearly a quarter of scams use that tactic. I can teach you how to invest. So the cryptocurrency angle. 18% of romance scammers pose as helpful, financially savvy partners. So that's interesting, what you were sort of just talking about then. And that's why Happy Money exists. Like, we really want to empower women with their finances so that they don't fall victim to these financial scammers. Or they'll say, I'm in the military, or they're on an oil rig. That's another common one. I need help with a delivery. We never met, but let's talk about marriage. That's some love bombing for you. I've gotten into some gold to invest, and you can trust me with your private pictures. Are those variations of those lines you've heard before from victims, or are there any others that you often hear?
So I've heard every one of those lines. And the criminals actually have a pretty decent playbook that they share around their criminal networks. And so the reason that these lines are used a lot is because they work. Right. I will say with the intimate photos ones, that's kind of a change that we've seen in maybe the last 6 years. So the criminals will say as part of the flirting, hey, why don't you go ahead and just send me a naked photo of yourself, right? And then I'll send you one. And it's just part of that back and forth flirtatious. Well, what's happening is they're actually the criminals are saving those pictures. So when the victim either comes out of the ether and realizes that, this person is nothing but a scammer, or they stop sending them money, whatever it is, then the criminal will use that photo as blackmail. And they'll say, I'm going to send this naked picture to your church, your work, your friends, your family. I'm going to post it on your Facebook page, whatever it is, until you pay me more. This is something we hear every single day on the Fraud Watch Network helpline. So don't send nude photos. Especially don't send nude photos to anyone, again, that you've never actually physically been in a room with.
That is very good advice.
Yes.
Terrifying.
Yeah.
So again, if someone is suspicious that they are in one of these scammer relationships, then they have the AARP hotline. They have local law enforcement. Anything else that they should do if they are suspecting the person they're talking to is a scammer?
Certainly report it. If you think the person you're speaking to is a scammer, and let's say you haven't even really gotten into deep conversation with them, but they're acting off, your gut's telling you, report them wherever you are. So if you're on a dating app, report them in the app. Because dating sites are taking these people off the page. If you're on social media, report it there. If they're texting you, you can hit junk, stop, whatever, and then, just stop any communication with them whatsoever. Love should be fun and exciting. They shouldn't be asking you for money. They shouldn't be asking you to lie. They shouldn't be asking you to keep things a secret, right? So just remember that when you're talking to somebody new online. And even then, take it one step further and maybe talk to someone in your local community.
Well, amen to that. Now, it's one thing when it happens to you and your alarm bells go off and you feel in your gut and you can cut it off or you can report it. But what happens when it happens to a loved one, which is so common for so many of our readers? From everything you've heard that you hear all the alarm bells, you see all the red flags, but this person genuinely believes they're in a relationship. And often it's hard to kind of convince them otherwise. What can you do if your loved one falls for a romance scam like this?
If a family member or friend comes to you and says, one, I'm in this new relationship, and you see signs of a scam, keep lines of communication open. Because what's happening on the other side is the criminal, remember, is telling them to keep it a secret. So they did go ahead and share it with you. And so you want to be very empathetic and be like, oh, well, tell me more. Tell me more. Don't right off the bat say, that's a criminal, that's a scammer. Because on the other side, he's going to say, well, baby, I told you they weren't going to believe. They're just jealous of you, right? But always lead every conversation with kindness and empathy. Then I will say that these are some of the toughest cases, especially when the target, the victim, is still in the emotional kind of constraints of the criminal, is to break them out of it. It is very, very difficult. People call us on the helpline all the time and say, what can I do? And I kind of I wish I had a magic wand, right? We don't. But here are some tools that other families have tried and worked. And so one of them is, and so this is for anyone out there right now that maybe is struggling with someone in their life that they're like, this person is a criminal, is one of the things is promises made, promises kept. And so it sounds so simple and easy, but just get out a sheet of paper and have your loved ones. Oh, okay, so let's just pretend the criminal's name is Jimmy. So Jimmy has said what? And so write down, I'm going to come see you. That was $5. I had an accident. That was this. I had this. I had this. Now, how many of these promises did he keep? Did he pay you back? Did you get your gold? Did he come and visit you? But actually having the person write it down and kind of get back into that cognitive brain and out of the emotion has really helped some people. Also, bringing in a third party. Perhaps this loved one really respects law enforcement. Call your local law enforcement and say, do you have an officer that can come and talk to my mom about this? a pastor, a minister, a rabbi, a third party to come and talk. Because people will say, I can't believe they don't believe me. I'm their daughter. Mm-hmm. Yes, we should always trust our family, but you also have to remember there's a lot of family dynamics out there playing into this. So sometimes that third party helps as well.
That's a great tip. So I feel like you don't want to say, don't go on the dating apps, don't go on social media. Like you want to be able to live your life.
Absolutely.
So what are some tips to anyone who wants to protect themselves from these romance scammers or protect a loved one proactively?
Mm-hmm. Just keep your defenses up and listen to your gut. I think that's one of the number one protections that are out there. And just remember all of the red flags. What I'd like to say on the dating apps too, though, my understanding of being in a relationship with someone is that you get to go to the movies together. You get to have a date night and go to dinner. Most of these people have never, ever been in the same presence as the person that they're in love with. So one of my colleagues calls it the 10-mile rule. He's like, don't date anyone out of 10 miles of where you are, because a lot of these criminals will say, well, I'm overseas, I'm in the military, I'm doing mission work. So keep your radius small. And I think that will cut down on a lot of these. And we're not saying to just not trust people. But again, nobody should be asking you for money, personal information, or encouraging you to invest in cryptocurrency. 100% every single time a scam.
That is a great thing to keep remembering. So this is interesting. AARP found that more than half of adults who've lost money in a romance scam never report it. And we talked about this a little bit before, like the embarrassment. But why do you think people are not reporting these financial romance scams?
I don't think people are reporting for a lot of reasons. One, we blame victims in society of financial crimes, of all financial crimes, and we have to change that. That has nothing to do with your intelligence, right? I've talked to doctors, lawyers. All victims are smart people. It has to do with your emotional vulnerability, right? So maybe at that time that criminal reached out, they weren't in a good emotional spot, and the criminal was able to manipulate that. Also, I don't think people report because they don't know where to report. They think, well, I gave him the money. It's not a crime. No, they stole that money from you under false pretenses. That is a crime. So report it to law enforcement. I think a lot of people think, well, what's it gonna matter? I'm not gonna get my money back. Yes, a lot of times the money is gone. Law enforcement has had a lot of success, reclaiming some of the money. But I always tell people, you're not reporting to necessarily get the money back. You're reporting so we have an accurate number and an accurate figure on how many people are falling victims to these scams every single year. Because I think all of the numbers that you said with the billions of dollars, I would take that and multiply it by 10 because of the underreporting.
Wow. So what are ways that we could make it easier to report, more accessible, people speaking about it more? What are things that you can do to make it more accessible when it comes to reporting this romance scam?
Absolutely. I think making reporting easier on the apps is definitely something we can do. So if you suspect somebody's profile is, they're a criminal, they're a scammer, have a report button right there and have the dating sites, review it immediately and then pull that site down and then warn any other user if they've been speaking to that person. Now, a lot of apps are already doing that. Social media, same thing. If someone is reaching out to you and you're like, this person is a criminal, this person is a scammer, report it and then have them removed. That's something that I'd like to see happen a lot quicker on some of these social media sites. I mean, I know myself, I've reported some pages and they're like, no, they're fine. I'm like, that is a criminal. That is nothing but a criminal. And I also think law enforcement does a really good job of taking these cases. But I think also one of the things that we need to do is encourage people more to report these cases to law enforcement so they have the understanding of the training they need to work from a trauma-informed perspective when dealing with victims. Because it's not just about the money that was stolen from these people. I mean, there is so much emotional outputs that come from this and significant mental health issues that we really have to train law enforcement and have better responses to the victims when they come forward.
Mm-hmm. And you're also seeing a lot more celebrities speaking out about it, because I know that celebrity romance scams is especially a target that you are seeing people who are impersonating soap stars or your favorite A-list celebrity, and people are falling for that. And it's one of those things, again, where you think that could never happen to me, or how could they fall for it? But I think even those celebrity scams seem sophisticated enough that enough people are falling for them. Are you seeing more of those celebrity targeted scams?
Oh, absolutely. Celebrity imposter scams are on the rise. And I think it happened a little bit during COVID and after COVID, because celebrities were more accessible on social media to their fans because they couldn't do performances, they couldn't do plays. And so they were kind of more accessible, on Facebook and Instagram, doing, little private concerts. And so people felt a connection to the celebrity.
It's interesting.
And this happens a lot. So if you respond to a fan page and you say, oh, great show last night in Denver. This has happened to me. The next thing you know, I get a DM saying, thank you so much, Amy. I'm actually, XYZ's manager, and he'd love to have a conversation with you because he loves talking to his fans. Well, what happens is, oh my God, my celebrity crush wants to talk to me, right? You get into that emotional kind of tizzy, and you don't think cognitively. You're not thinking, why would they want to talk to me?
You're hanging on that hope. You're like, oh my goodness, my dream has just come true.
And who doesn't want to have a connection with their favorite celebrity?
Right.
But the problem with these scams in particular is kind of what you said. People say, how can that happen? So when a victim hears that, they just internalize that as nothing but shame and blame. And that, again, is gold to the criminal. The criminals want to keep the victim silent.
Right. See that right there. It's not always the celebrity is reaching out. It might be somebody who's posing as their manager. And you're always kind of hoping for the best. And like, why not me?
Yeah.
I mean, is there a certain element of like, if something feels too good to be true, it might be too good to be true? Or where do you kind of find that line when you're dealing with some of these romance scams or the celebrity scams?
We used to say that a lot, but the criminals are really good at making it sound true. So it's not even too good to be true. It just sounds true. I will say this, and anyone can fight me on this. No celebrity is reaching out to a fan through a DM. Anyone can fight me on that. Brad Pitt, Jennifer Aniston, whoever it is not reaching out to a fan on a DM, and they're certainly not going to be asking you for money, personal information, or for cryptocurrency.
Right. It always comes back to the money.
Always comes back
you
to
for money, then it is red flag, and step away.
Yes. Run away.
Run away. Run as fast as you can. Okay. So can you sum up a little bit of the resources for folks who are affected? I know this AARP has their fraud hotline. I know you said local law enforcement. Any other community or groups that folks should know about to protect themselves?
Sure, absolutely. Resources are really important in this. And this is one of the proudest things in my 24 years of working in fraud is just how many more resources there are out there for victims of fraud. So certainly you can call us on the AARP Fraud Watch Network helpline. Go ahead and give that number, 877-908-3360. As a part of our helpline, we also have a peer victim support group, which is an online support group for people who have been victims of fraud. And we actually have a special romance scam group that meets twice a week because it's really helpful for people to see that they're not alone and to meet other survivors of these scams. So certainly law enforcement, the FBI, Give an Hour is a great nonprofit group that works with a lot of victims of romance scam. The resources are out there. You just have to look for them and find them. And again, if you can't, call us on the helpline and we'll get them for you.
Okay, what is the number one thing you want listeners or viewers to take away from this episode?
The number one thing I want people to know is fraud can happen to anybody at any time. That is one of the biggest misconceptions is it only happens to women. It only happens to young people. It only happens to old people, whatever it is. We all have a target on our back. And if you have $1 to your name, there is a criminal that wants it. So don't ever think it can not happen to you because it will.
So how can folks connect with AARP's fraud team?
They can visit aarp.org/fraudwatchnetwork.
Well, I am so grateful, Amy, that you are here and AARP is there to support victims and you have the fraud hotline. And like you say, there are more resources now than there have ever been. And we are in a position of power more than we've ever been before. Absolutely. Because we have the knowledge, we know the tactics, and we can really protect ourselves from some of these romance scammers. And this episode has given us so many great pointers. So Amy, thank you so much for coming on Happy Money. This has been so helpful and so useful, and hopefully will help at least somebody listening or watching,
I hope so,
protect themselves from romance scams. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us on Happy Money. Like this episode and share it with someone you care about. They can watch on YouTube or listen on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or Spotify.